Hey everyone, Tech Rally here, and today I'm so excited about this video series. If you didn't know the origins of the Tech Rally channel, I started off making YouTube tutorials about Vue, JavaScript, all that good stuff. And eventually I started talking about how to break into tech, all the strategies regarding resume, LinkedIn, and all that stuff. I'm still going to be doing that, but I also want to go back to my roots of let's just code and figure things out. Specifically here, I want to focus more on the interview preparation. A lot of times we talk about building projects and all of that is very good. But what do you do once you get to the interview? You have to be prepared to answer technical questions, solve technical questions, all that good stuff. And I want to more focus on the front end because that is my specialty. And this is where front-end eval kicks in. I'm going to be using the front-end eval website as a test bank or resource to just solve front-end questions. And if you go to frontendeval.com, you're going to see right away free exercises to practice for modern front-end development interviews. And I've looked at a couple questions and I can honestly say that the resource is very, very good. It's a good balance of testing out your JavaScript as well as testing out your HTML and CSS skills. And as a front-end developer, having both is really important. So the fact that they're able to stretch out your skills in both aspects is going to be really, really helpful during the interview process. I plan on doing a lot more front-end specific interview style questions on this channel because I want you to be best prepared for these types of interviews. So with that being said, let's get to it. The first one that we're going to be working on is the multi-step form. I'm going to be building this in my local environment, but eventually I'll move it over to either a code sandbox or a GitHub repo. I still haven't decided yet. Look in the description, there will be a link below. Definitely check out frontendeval.com if you want to practice front-end interview type questions. So let's just get this started and read the prompt. So the prompt says that your PM has asked you to create the most annoying sign-up form in the world. A form that has 4 fields, but on a series of 4 different screens. Your name, email, date of birth, and password will be entered separately into the site. So as you can see right now, page 1 has a name label, a name input text, and the next. And then page 2 has something similar, page 3 has something similar, and page 4 has something similar. So the specs are as follows. Backlinks appear on every screen other than the first one. Going back to the step the user was just on. Input is required on every screen prior to proceeding to the next. On the last screen, provide a submit button that calls a handle submit function, passing in the values of all the fields, and show a success screen. Looks pretty straightforward. Essentially, what we were trying to build is a form that goes from one page to the other, and at the end, when you submit, we should show a success screen. So without further ado, let's get this started. I have my React application already loaded up and it just says hello world. So we'll just start from a very, very basic skeleton app. And before I actually even start, I like to document or just write in my notes what the actual requirements are. So I highly encourage you to read the prompt once, read it again so you fully understand. So the first requirement is that backlinks should appear on every screen except the first. Cool. The second is that the input value is required before you get to the next page. Fair enough. The third one is that the handle submit should submit. And fourth, show a success screen. So that is going to be very good to do. All right, so knowing what we know, how do we do this? So beyond just the requirements of what needs to occur in the UI, what I like to do is think about, all right, how do I tackle each little bit of how do I tackle each section, right? It looks like if you're familiar with React and like forms in React, then generally you want to have something like form values or something to keep track of all the input values. So in this case, I'm just going to say form values is an object that contains name, email, birth date, and password. And what else? What else? Let's actually minimize this a little bit and make this one a little bit bigger. And I think we're gonna need to figure out how to manage state within each page turn. So when you go from page 1 to page 2 to page 3, you're gonna need something that can handle the page state management. So we'll just call it page and form values. Awesome. I think that should be good enough, but let's just go really, really granular and specific. For example, if it's a name, I anticipate it's gonna be a string that's also a input type of text. And then email is also going to be a string. That's an input type of text. And then password or birth date will also be a string with the input type of birthday or date. And lastly, password will be a string as well with the input type of password. It looks like we're also gonna need a label, and we also need a button for submission that either is next or submit. Cool. So I think we got most of the stuff that we want. And lastly, you're gonna notice in the prompt itself, like the form is very, very similar from here, the first page to the second page to the third page to the fourth page. All that's different is maybe this back button and all of that stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of reusability, and rather than just hard coding each value, maybe we could contain all of our reusable parameters like the type, the name, the ID, and just kind of keep a record of that in like an array of objects. Let me elaborate on that a little bit more via just like the code itself. So let's get that started. So let's start off with this reusable fields array of objects. And what do I really want to prioritize in these array of objects, I guess? I think first what we're going to do is just create the array and see what we could put in there. So maybe an ID like name, and then a name of name, type of text for the name field, and am I missing anything else? Oh, a label. So let's do name. Cool. The next one, we're gonna do ID of email, name, email, type is text, and last but not least, label is email. We're gonna do two more. ID is birth date, name is birth date, type is date, label is birth date. Cool. Last but not least, password, name is password, type is password, and label is password. All right, let's get this started. So the idea behind this is that depending on what page we're on, we're going to be either using this object or this object or this object to kind of render out some of the static stuff within our application. But in terms of the values themselves, we're going to be handling that in the React state application. So let's just get this started. So let's just return a form instead. And just for the sake of this, I'm going to just put this in parentheses. And then here, I'm just going to render out what it looks like with maybe a hard-coded value first, and then show you how we can add some dynamicness to it, if dynamicness is actually a word. But here, let's just do label. And then we could just do HTML4 maybe fields of 0, which is the first one, dot name, and then we'll just hard code this as fields. Actually, no, we don't need to hard code this. Fields of 0 dot label, and cool. And then we'll put an input field here. Type is fields of 0 dot type. And let's get rid of this hello world. Whoops. Let's get rid of this hello world. And then here we'll do name equals fields of 0 dot name. ID equals fields of 0 dot ID. And let's leave alone the value for now. Last but not least, let's do a button. And we'll call it next. And here, let's just do type equals submit. And basically, this is the general gist of what our application is going to look like. Basically, so what we need to do is somehow dynamically do fields of 1, fields of 2, and fields of 3. But we also need to keep track of our state changes. And how do we do that? Let's import the use state from React, which is used for our state management. And here, let's just hard code a single, well, not hard code, but let's just use a single variable called name and set name. And here, I'm going to just do value equals name. And create a function called onChange. E. And maybe I could zoom it up a little bit. Actually, no, I'll keep it right here. Hopefully that's okay for y'all. And here, I'm going to say that set name e.target.value, which will get the value from the change. And all we need to do is, I believe, just add here onChange equals onChange. So let's open up the inspector tool after I actually console.log the name. So let's clear this out, refresh it again. Cool. And I'll just say Alex. And now Alex shows up. Perfect. So we have seen a scenario where it's just a single value with a hard-coded name with the fields of 0. But how do we make this somewhat dynamic, right? We need to be going from one page to the other. And right now, we're not really doing that. So what we can do is first, we could create that page state variable that we were talking about. And we'll default that page value to 0. And then here, instead of fields of 0.name, we're going to be replacing all these zeros with the page number. And then now instead of name and set name, let's just call it form values. I think that's what we said we're going to call it, form values. And here we'll call it set form values. And instead of just like an empty string, let's just create an object called name, email, birth date, and password. Cool. Obviously, it's going to break because we have to remove this and somehow update the value, right? It has to be form values of name or form values.email. So how do we get that? So this is a little tricky and requires a bit of ES6 syntax magic, but hopefully this makes sense. What we need to get is form values dot something. But how do we know what that something is? Not quite clear, right? So what we're going to do is form values of fields dot actually let's do form values, sorry, dot actually I think we could just do this form actually fields I apologize, we're going to do fields of the page, if that makes sense. So fields of the page will give us one of these objects. So in this case, page is 0. and then we need to basically, you'll see that our name key is associated to the name of each section. So like, for example, we're going to be looking for .name here. Cool. And let's just comment this out for now. And comment this one out for now. So let me re-explain form values of fields of page is undefined. Okay, that's interesting. Let's see where the mistake is. Form values of fields of the page is 0. Ah, I might have messed that one up. I think I need to do form fields like that, dot name. And let's erase this and start it again. Cool. You provided a field value without onChange. Let's not worry about that for now. So what are we actually doing here? We're taking form values, which is this object, and we're looking for either a key called name, email, birth date, or password. So we need to provide this section here with one of those key values. And how we do that is we look at this fields array, and then we take the page number. It's either 0, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to look for the name key. So the name key for the name, which is kind of hard to decipher, is name. And if you choose the second page, it's going to be email. The third page is going to be birth date. And then the fourth page is going to be password. And that just happens to match the form value keys. So as we're changing pages, all we're doing is just saying, hey, look for password, look for birthday, look for email, and look for name. Now let's set up our onChange function. So here we're going to do set form values instead of set name. And we're going to use some spread syntax here. So we're going to say form values. And here we're going to put some ES syntax magic again and say this is going to be the fields of the page dot name, which is the same as that value, to e.target.value. And here, let's just pass in onChange again. And let's see what happens. Console.log form values. And refresh the page. ALEX. Cool. Nice. That's exactly what we want to see. Imagine if we set this page to 1. Let's see what happens. It's email, LEE at LEE. Cool. So now we know how this is working, right? We're dynamically able to render a different input. Actually, not, yeah, we're able to dynamically update the form values depending on what page we're on. But now we need to figure out how do we change the page, right? So how can we do that? We need to look at the submit button here. So first, let's just do a onSubmit, which exists on a form, and then we'll call it handle form submit, which doesn't exist yet. So let's create a function called handle form submit. And let's actually e.prevent default to hijack the bubbling effect here. And then what do we want to do here? We want to do some kind of conditional check to either submit or go to next page, right? So if your last page, submit. If you're not last page, go next. So how do we know last and not last, right? Well, if you think about it, all of our fields here, each object could technically represent a portion of the page. So like page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. So in a sense, you know that there's 4 pages because there's 4 elements in the array. So I'm going to create a variable called page equals fields.length -1. oh, I can't say page. It has to be last page. And what this is doing is it's going to give me 4 minus 1, which is 3. And then now you know 0, 1, 2, 3 because everything starts with a 0. And here, let's go down. Basically, if last page, else, let's do something else. So console.log, submitting, else we need to set page to page plus 1. So I'm not going to really do the submitting work right now, but we'll do that later. And just so we are satisfying some of these details, like it's either next or submit, and since we already have this concept of a last page, we can do here some if last page. We're going to do some tertiary operator kind of stuff here. So we're going to say this or that. So if you're on your last page, then we're going to do submit. Otherwise, we're going to do next. What's going on? Let's refresh. Why is this showing submit? If I messed up. If page equals last page, then show submit. Otherwise, show next. Next thing we want to do here is validations, right? Because right now we could just go next and it'll just do something here. Again, I messed up here, as you can tell. If page equals last page, I apologize. So when I click next, right now I can just go from email to email. But we want to add some guardrails for not going to the next page unless there are values there. So here, we can do it kind of an easy way by just saying disabled equals. Here, let's just say fields of page dot value. Nope, that's not right. It's form values of fields of page dot name here. So let's see, how do we interpret this if it doesn't exist? Cool. So what this means is that it's going to check for the value of the form value. It's going to check the value of this specific key. And if it's empty, then we're just going to move on to the next. So hopefully that makes sense, because basically now we can't go next because there's nothing there. But when we type in FASD or ALX, now we can go next. Cool. And then there should be some validation here as well, which it doesn't work. So there's something going on there, but we'll probably have to address this. Cool. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's see. Okay. Let's just move on to the email, because I already see what I did wrong here. It's not type text. I believe it's type email. So let's just try that really quick. Cool. Yep. Press enter. Please enter an email address. So that's something that I made a mistake on. Cool. So let's see. What else do we need to do here? So let's just refresh. We could type in Alex. Next. Lee@lee.com. Next. We could choose a birth date. And then password. And don't save, because we're not doing anything here. Cool. Awesome. Submitting. Cool. So what else is our requirement, right? Because right now, if you think about it, it kind of works. All we need to do now is to figure out how do we submit this form and then show the success page. Let's see. How do we want to do this? I think right now we're just rendering out the form, but in some shape or fashion, we need to be able to render out a success page. So actually what we need to do here is we need to create a wrapper around this form. And maybe here we could say this is the success page. But obviously we're gonna need to be able to dynamically render this and not just show this is the success page throughout the form process. So one thing about the interview process that I want to kind of encourage you to do is like, you do come up with a game plan, but maybe there is something that you're not thinking about at that moment in time. So it's okay to iterate and just rethink your thoughts as you're building. Otherwise, like, you can't anticipate everything. So what I mean by that is I thought that there was only going to be 2 state variables I need to worry about, but actually there might be a 3rd state variable like form, or like maybe we could call show success screen or show success, which basically says that like, do we want to show the success screen? If so, then render this. So let's just create a new state variable called show success, set show success equals use state of false. And here, let's just say show success. Ooh, we're gonna have some fun here. Show success question mark, this div. Otherwise, let's take this, put it here. I spelled success wrong. Awesome. And then now let's try Alex, lee.com, choose a date and password. Don't save. Well, actually, what do we not do correctly? When the user submits, we didn't set the show success to true. So what we need to do here is set show success to true. And let's see, submit. This is the success page. Cool. So everything is working correctly here. I believe that we're able to go from one screen to the other and submit a form. Ideally, you're going to be making some type of asynchronous request to some API, get the data back and all of that stuff. But for the sake of this exercise, maybe what we can do is after you submit the form, let's just alert and JSON.stringify the form values. And let's see what happens here. So let's refresh the page. Again, le@le.com, maybe something like that, and then password. Cool. So name, boom, we know it works properly. And I think that's it. The last thing I want to do just a little bit here is just clean up some of the CSS. We're not going to go too crazy with it because this is more of like a test environment, so I anticipate the CSS parts won't be as crazy in depth. But what we can do here is maybe just kind of just wing it a little bit. Label display block, and then we could also do input display block, and we could actually just get rid of this. Cool. And then the button display block as well. Doesn't really do much. Let's see, why is actually this is fine because it kind of matches to what the user image looks like. But hey, guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to do this back button. So let's get that figured out. So basically we could only show the back button when you're on page 2, 3, or 4. So here, how do we want to do this? Maybe let's wrap this one in here. And let's just create a button that says back. Cool. Don't worry about the styling for now, but let's just get the functionality working and then we'll move forward with the cleaner styles. First, let's just give it an ID because I'm going to be styling this later anyway. So I'll just call it back button. And then here, let's just give it a on click On back click, what are we gonna do? What we're going to do is we're gonna set our page -1. So on back click equals set page of page -1, because you only want to do that if you want to go back a page. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying, but hopefully you catch my drift here. We just want to move it back a page. So if I type in Alex, enter, go back, you'll see Alex. The only problem here now is that our first page has a back page. So we don't want to do that, or we don't want to show this when we're on the first page. So how about we just create another variable called first page equals, actually, I think first page is pretty implicit here. So rather than just creating a new variable, I guess we could just do this instead. If page equals 0, and we'll create this button out here. Oops, I missed. Curly brace close, save it. Awesome. So basically it's just saying if page, that's not right. If page does not equal 0, then we want to show the button. If the page is 0, we don't want to show the back button, right? So cool. So now we know that it works, right? Awesome. But now the styling is a little weird, so let's just fix that one, because basically based on this image here, we want it to have a blue color with a little arrow and no background. So let's do something similar. We can do, actually this button doesn't really do anything here, so let's just leave that alone. Let's call it back button, I believe. We'll do background transparent, and then border none, and then color blue. Awesome. Sweet. That was easy. And now let's just test it out. Let's refresh the page. We'll do Mike Lee, mike@lee.com. We'll give it a birth date, password, and then here we got that submit. Cool. So let's look at the prompt again just to make sure we have everything covered. We got OK. Don't save, and now we have this is the success page. I believe all the requirements are checked off. Obviously, you know, there's a little bit of styling that could be better and whatnot, but overall, I would say if you're able to get to this functionality part, add a bit of styling on the back button, and just having some type of validation here, making sure that email is required and entering a valid email, then overall, I think this is pretty good. Obviously, you could make it into a card, put it down the middle. All of that extra stuff will just be a good bonus to add. But I would say that if you were able to get this far and just get this functionality to work, good job. Success page, don't show. Cool, this is success page. Awesome. I think we're finished. I would highly encourage you to maybe do some additional challenges on front-end eval if you're able to do this relatively easy. And also, again, just check out front-end eval. They're a really great resource. All the exercises are free, and just it will really, really get your hands dirty into what a typical coding interview is going to be like. So highly encourage you to check out front-end eval when you are in that interview process and just unsure of what type of questions that they might ask you, especially for front-end roles. And other than that, I'm going to try to make this a weekly series. So it might not always be front-end eval, but at the same time, we're just trying to get better each and every day. So let's continue to just keep each other accountable, hone our craft, and become successful software developers. Thank you for staying till the end, and I really appreciate you just watching the whole content. Let's keep building developers. Your time will come. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.